Thank you, and it's incredible to see so many people in the room who inspired us and directly work with us, and I think about 10 people are in the room who we put to work at a design session that we had in March leading up to this report. And so I'm here to talk a little bit about the report before we dive into the panel, and we were glad that it's gotten a little bit of media. The Daily News ran an opinion piece this morning, and WNYC just aired something, if folks heard it on the way in, and I love the title, which says, "If you're bored with the mayor's debate, check out these innovative ideas." So we'll see. Hopefully we can live up to that heading. Again, the report title, which you all see in the packets, is Innovation in the City. And it was part of a year-long process that we call the Mayoral Policy Lab. And so experimentation was really the context for everything that we did here. And I think, as you know, New York City is an experimental town. We like to try things out. We invented hip-hop in the South Bronx. We put a park on an old railroad station in Chelsea. And I was in Brooklyn at a rock concert a few weeks ago, and I had foie gras stuffed in a donut. So yes, it was fattened duck liver in a sugar-filled pastry. So we push the boundaries here. I'm not sure it all works, but we try. And I think that ethos was really embodied by the Bloomberg administration. So they looked far and wide around the country, around the world, and they would try things. And they took advantage of the scale that we have here in New York City. And as you know, we've done so much. We now have an engineering campus being built by one of our rivals, Cornell, on Roosevelt Island. We set up one of the country's first offices of financial empowerment, which is being replicated everywhere. And the streets have been just completely turned around since when I was growing up in the 1970s. So traffic closed on Times Square, Citibank, bicycles buzzing all around the city. It's really a marvel to see all the experimentation and the results that we've benefited from for the last 12 years. But what struck Jonathan and I when we put this report together is the depression that started gripping the policy community in New York, that this experimentation might come to a crashing halt. And so that's what inspired us to do something, which was this effort, which is really about scanning the country and the world for some of the best ideas that have worked elsewhere and seeing how we can retrofit them right here in New York. And what we were struck by when we started this was the lack of a model for doing such a thing. So obviously there's so many good campaign and issue efforts trying to influence the candidates that are out there. But almost all of those are internally focused on New York and what we're doing and get very in the weeds in terms of human services or education or job creation. And we really wanted to look externally and couldn't find another project that very thoughtfully and methodically looked at issues around the world to see how we could repurpose them here in New York. And our process, again, which some of you have been a part of, worked a bit like a funnel. So we initially cast a very wide net and talked to roughly 200, really, because I know I'm looking at the various staffs out here, 200 policymakers and practitioners and mayoral chiefs of staff all over the world, and came up with about 120 ideas. And of the 120, we put them through a filter, which was really sort of two criteria we had for all of the policies. One, did it reach scale citywide? And two, has it been proven to work or at least shows real promise to take root in that city? And then we took those 120 ideas and then we road tested them here by calling a lot of folks in New York who are policymakers and people within City Hall. So Linda, I think we called 3 people on your staff. And then after that tough workout with the New York City policymakers, it winnowed down to 20 ideas. And then we took those 20, and here's where some of you were involved, and we set up something that we called a World Cafe session, which is something NYU Wagner has built over the years. So we had tables a little bit like this, and each table had 3 or 4 ideas, and we would literally ring a bell, and you would work on those ideas and then switch to the next table. And we really tried to mix up corporate leaders, folks from philanthropy, and policymakers to get some real perspective on the ideas. And we were glad most of the ideas survived. 5 of them were tossed into the dustbin. And all 15 that made it into this report, I think, are that much stronger for the sessions. And when you look at the ideas, and this is something that I think is striking, is none of them fit into a neat category of housing or jobs or education. They're really a mashup. So if you look at something like accessory dwelling units in Seattle, that really incorporates housing, aging in place, and zoning issues. In LA, we looked at a program that brought together services for immigrants with an export-oriented economic development strategy. And then there are some just simply sound good management practices. And I'm thinking of Stephen Goldsmith, who I've worked a lot with, who refers to this as better, faster, cheaper. So what are those mechanisms or tools that you can build into your administration to get a much better service delivery? So the Chicago Innovation Loan Fund is a good example of that. So when you look at the report too, because of this diversity of areas and policies built into each of these ideas, we intentionally didn't rank them, we didn't chunk them in any particular bucket. They're really laid out for everyone to take a look at. So with that shuffle in mind, I was going to walk through just a couple of them. So is there someone who can help me with the PowerPoint? Whoa, too much help. All right, kindergarten to college savings. So Bob said a lot about this. And this, as some of you know, is a universal program where every student that's enrolled in kindergarten in San Francisco receives $50 that's put into a savings account. And for low-income families, that amount is doubled. And what's really great about this program is it's a public-private partnership. So the San Francisco Foundation helps to organize additional match funds for folks that will put into the accounts. And it's really begun to take root. So there are 8,000 of these accounts open in San Francisco, but when we had our design session, many people said, well, that's great, we really want this, but how could we possibly reach scale in New York City? And so then we looked back at the participants, and you may remember you had some good ideas and said, we absolutely can do this in New York, partly because it is a public-private partnership, and what better place in terms of the business community and philanthropy than New York to try this. So moving on. Let's see where the shuffle takes us. Good, Peak Academy. And this one was featured on the NYC spot. This is essentially an innovation school for entry and mid-level agency staff. And Mayor Michael Hancock in Denver, who was recently elected to office, came in and he said, you know, I've heard a lot about Bloomberg and what he's doing and other innovative mayors, and his predecessor, Hickenlooper, who is now governor, did a lot of innovation. He said, I'm just going to really cover the field and be innovative in every area there is in Denver. And he brought someone in as his essentially chief innovation officer, Dave Edinger, who said, Mr. Mayor, this is great, and we're going to pursue these ideas, but they won't go anywhere unless the staff at all the agencies have a sense of what you're doing and they're a part of the innovation. And when he meant the staff, he meant everyone. So he set up a school where essentially every staff is set to go through, it's pretty much an innovation boot camp that focuses on change management, and it's an intensive 5 days. The mayor himself, I think, is enrolling next month to spend 5 days and show that you can take that time out of your schedule. And what's great about this is that you don't receive the training, that there's a pressure on all of the students that go through it, all the agency staff, to come out with 1 to 2 to 3 innovative ideas that they'll then go back to their home agency and implement. And their supervisors are now being promoted based on innovations coming out of their unit. So this was one when we got together, people were really excited because they said in New York City, we really need a program like this, partly because there's so much turnover that's going to happen in the public sector workforce. And also there's a fear that when Mayor Bloomberg leaves office, we might lose so many of the talented young people who have been at the various agencies. So they said, we've got to do this. But one of the things we need to do to retrofit, what you'll see in the report, is we must work with organized labor, because that is much more a part of the public sector environment and dynamic here in New York than in Denver. And they also said there are some incredible resources here that we could build into this, such as Coro and the City University of New York, which, like Harvard, does a lot of training for agency officials. So now going across the pond to London, This is Space Hive, and this is an interesting one. It wasn't created by a mayor, but by a startup tech company. Some young guys put this together just a few years ago, and it's essentially creating a Kickstarter for capital funds. And if those of you who don't know Kickstarter, this is a platform on the web in which you put a business idea out there. Maybe it's, I'd like to set up a foie gras donut stand in Lower Manhattan, and you see, will people match and buy into your business idea so you can get the funds to get going. So how this is being used in cities across the UK is that communities are coming up with the capital projects to build, whether bridges or community gardens, and it's really inverting the whole capital budget process. So rather than what gets built being decided in planning departments, or the communities are putting it forward. And although the Space Hive guys haven't ironed out all the details, they are planning to work with various municipal governments in the UK to build this in to the capital budget process. And what really works about the program is that they spend a lot of time within that incredibly complicated planning process to understand the contracts and the laws, which are all built in to the program. So this is the last one, and we have to include this. Provenance figures prominently in digital badging, which is a way to demonstrate proficiency in coding language or other tech-based skills. And it's being used specifically to target kids who are borderline students or are currently failing, as a way to re-engage them so that they can receive a credential that's widely recognized by companies like Google and others, and then use that as an opportunity to re-engage them into the traditional school system. So Philadelphia is doing a lot with this with their youth agency, and Providence through their school system. And what's really neat is they're also advancing it to create what they call a digital portfolio or backpack, in which students can control and curate what they've done in their credentials, pretty much like a resume. So that takes us full circle. And really, when you look through the report, we think of it as a bit of a snapshot of what's going on around the country and around the world that not only New York, but other cities can learn from. And I don't know if I want to sign us up for more work, but Jonathan and I have been saying that maybe in a couple weeks we're going to issue the next tier of 30 or 40 great ideas that we found that didn't quite work in New York, but might be useful for other cities around the country. So we are going to move into the panel, and I want to be clear that most people are getting this for the first time this morning, so we are not going to have the panel focus on the report or the ideas, but really have the report as something that sets the stage for innovation in cities and what's next for New York and other cities. But before we move there, I just want to say a couple of thank yous in terms of the work team involved in this. First, to my team, JCO, who really powered a lot of the writing and the research and also the design, with Ahmad Dowell, who also powered the design and did so much to bring this event together. So thank you, Ahmad. It's here. We did this in, I think, 3.5 weeks. So there was a lot of sweating through the details. And on the research team, Adam Foreman, David Giles, of course, Jonathan, and then I also see Adam Eckstein, who migrated to the borough president's office in the midst of this research, but we wanted to really extend a thank you to everyone who's involved in putting the ideas together and making 200 phone calls to get us here. And lastly, of course, I have to thank Citi for all they did to support this. Initially, I had a conversation with Pam Flaherty and Brandy McHale, and if any of you know them, they got it immediately. I think it was within 10 minutes, they say, we see what you're doing, this is great, this is exactly the type of thing that Citi wants to support. Then we immediately talked to Eileen Ault, who adopted everything that we're doing, directly supported it, and worked with us the whole way. So thank you, Eileen. And with that, I want to invite the panelists to come up and really get at this.